The Hmong people love to live high up in the mountains and far away from the cities. However, living high up in the mountains of Southeast Asia, there are strange creatures, spirits, and demons that the Hmong have encountered for centuries. One of the creatures or spirits that the Hmong often encounter is the Pashong. The Pashong is like little people with messy hair and rotted faces. There's always a debate about whether or not the Pashong is a spirit or a demon. The Pashong are often seen at night close to an active funeral. Many people have also encountered Pashong at the graveyard. The Pashong seems to have magical powers. They can make you sick all of a sudden by taking your soul away, which oftentimes would require a shaman to retrieve your soul back to your body. The Pashong can hold on to a branch full of leaves and appear to be a tree stump. Many Hmong believe that when some people die without a proper funeral or burial, they later become Pashong. This is just a little introduction to what a Pashong is. The next story is about the life of a Pashong. I remember that I was still little at the time. I don't know why, but all the villagers started leaving. My mother was so sick that she couldn't go. My father had died when I could barely learn how to crawl. I remember before the villagers left, some of them came to ask my mother if it was okay that they take me with them. I guess they knew that my mother had been sick for a long time, and she won't be getting any better soon. However, my mother said she believes she will get better, and that she needs me to stay so I can go bring her water to drink. Due to my mother's inability to walk a long distance, I stayed with her to help her out in our small house, made of woven bamboo walls and a straw roof. Before the last family in the village left, they came over to see my mother and me. A granny came and patted me on the head as she was crying. The granny gave me 2 boiled corns and said for me to stay with my mother, and that once my mother gets better, then I can leave with her. Before that family left the village, they left us some food, knowing that my mother is too weak to cook us any good food. After 4 or 5 days, my mother and I ran out of food. Every day, my mother would tell me to go outside and see if there's anyone passing by. If I see anyone passing by, then to ask them for some food. Every day I would go out to look for people, but no one would pass by our old village. I would go around and go into each emptied house to look for food, but there's none. I can hear wild chickens crowing from far away, but I don't have the energy to go looking for wild chickens. Even if I see a chicken, I might not know how to catch it. The next few days I was so hungry. My mother said not to go out anymore. The more I walk around, the hungrier I will be. My mother said to lay down on her chest and go to sleep. That way, I won't feel hungry. My mother was so sick that she couldn't get up at all. I went and put my head on my mother's chest. She patted my head and told me stories to make me fall asleep. I remember when my mother woke me up, she gave me a chicken drumstick. She didn't tell me where she got it from, but I ate the chicken drumstick, and it was delicious. My mother was walking around. Seems like she got better. After I ate the chicken drumstick, my mother told me that we had to leave the village. If we stay, there's no food to eat. My mother then squatted down and told me to climb onto her back, and she would carry me. I climbed onto my mother's back, and she carried me out the door. As she carried me on her back, I turned my head back to look at the village. I don't know why, but the village was already being consumed by the jungle. Every house in the village was unrecognizable because there were tall plants and banana trees growing at every corner. I thought to myself, how could this be? I was just running around the village looking for food the other day, and I don't remember the village looking like that. As my mother carried me on her back, I realized that she did not use the dirt path that people are on. She continued to carry me through the dense jungle. After a while, I told her that I'm hungry. Then she sat me down by a small creek. I watched her start flipping rocks, and she caught a few freshwater crabs. She broke open one of the crabs and gave me a piece of it to eat. My mother put some crab legs in her mouth and showed me how to eat raw crab. I told my mother that I don't want to eat crabs. I want to eat chicken. She told me that if I want to eat chicken, then I'll have to wait until we find a Hmong village. We were able to find a Hmong village shortly after that. However, my mother told me that we cannot go and live in the village with the people. My mother never tells me why we couldn't live with the people in the village. However, I do realize that my mother and I had changed physically. We seemed to be shorter in stature with lots of hair. My mother would often make me hold a branch of leaves when she went off to get a chicken from the village. I remember one evening, my mother told me to hold a branch of leaves as she went back to the Hmong village to get a chicken. I waited for her all night and was hungry. When morning came, my mother hadn't returned, so I decided to go to the Hmong village. When I got to the edge of the village, I saw several villagers hanging something on a stick, and they were all spitting and lecturing whatever that they hung on the stick. I waited until nighttime so no one could see me. I went to see what they hung on the stick that day. When I got there, it was a piece of hairy skin. I don't know what that piece of hairy skin is, or who it belongs to. I went inside the village to look for my mother, but I couldn't find her anywhere. During the day, I would hide in the pig pen with the pigs so no one would see me. I remember one night, I heard a boy crying. I went outside to look, and it was a little boy crying loudly. I don't know what happened to that little boy. What is he so upset about? But after a while, his mother came out to calm him down and to love him before she brought him back inside their house. The next night, the little boy came out and started crying on the dirt and flopping around. He was upset about something again. He was throwing a tantrum. After a while, his mother came back out to calm him down again and then took him back inside the house. I thought to myself that maybe if I go cry in that same spot, maybe my mother will be able to find me too. Or maybe if I go and cry in that same spot, someone will come out to love me too. The next night, I waited and waited, but the little boy didn't come out to cry. So I went to that same spot and imitated how the little boy would cry. I was fake crying before I started to cry for real, since I'm hungry, and I couldn't find my mother. Then the little boy's father came out with a stick and started chasing me away. I ran into the dark and hid behind a tree. I saw the little boy's father go back to the spot where I was crying earlier, and he started spitting on that spot. I don't know what that means. I was so hungry. I haven't eaten anything for several days. One early morning, I snuck into a house. It was dark, and so I started opening one pot after another to look for food. I found some old rice, and I started eating. I wasn't careful. Then a hand grabs my arm. I looked up, and it was a man. The man said, "Hurry, honey, turn on the lamp. I've caught a Pashong." The man's wife got up and turned on the lamp. The man looked at me, and I was so scared because he was holding a big stick as if he's going to hit me with it. But then he said, "It's you? You must be hungry." The man actually started sobbing and said, "Don't eat those rice. Those rice are old, son." I don't know why he kept sobbing, and then he finally said, "When we came back to the old village, we came to check on you and your mother. You two were already long dead in the house. Where is your mother now?" I shook my head, showing that I don't know where my mother is. The man's sons and daughter got up. He told his son to hold my hand tight and don't let me go. The man then told his wife to make some new rice. The man grabs a big pot, and then he wraps some ropes around the big pot and did some religious chanting, which I don't understand. After he's done, he told me to get into that big pot. I went and sat inside that big pot. Once the new rice is ready, he gave me a big bowl of rice and some brown sugar with it. The man and his family watched me eat. I would eat the rice and looked at the man. I saw a few tears coming down his cheeks. He said to me, "Son, maybe your mother is the Pashong that the villagers killed the other day. They hung her skin at the edge of the village as a way to repel other Pashong." After I finished eating, he touches my face and pick a few rice off. He told me that he's going to close the big pot, but for me to stay inside. I stay inside the big pot. The old man filled the pot with water up to my waist, and then he started a fire underneath the big pot I was in. All I remember is that it got warm, and I fell asleep inside the pot. It was so cold outside every night, so when I finally feel the warmth of the pot, I fell asleep. I don't know what happened after that. That's all that I remember from my past life when I was a Pashong. There are some people in this world that remember their last life. Some of them had written down their previous life and turned them into a story. I've heard of stories such as a man talking about his last life, where he died and became a tiger. The heaven only allows him to kill one animal every 10 days. If he's sleeping, and he's not careful when a fly lays on him, if he turns his body and squashes the fly, he has to eat the fly because the fly is also an animal. After eating the fly, he has to wait 10 more days before he can kill another animal. That's why there are so many hungry tigers. I don't know why some people are born with the ability to remember their last life. I'm one of those people. In my last life, my mother and I were Pashong. That's all for this video. Thank you for making all the way through and supporting my stories. Have a wonderful day or night.